Well, hello and welcome to episode 123 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, there was a time in movie history where there was no talking in movies. There was no singing. There might have been dancing, but there was just a wee bit of music playing. You saw your movie, your silent picture, but then all that changed, right? The jazz singer came, changed the whole world, and it changed it for, all the Hollywood stars, just like Don Lockwood in Singin' in the Rain, Michaela.
Yep. Yeah. There was a movie coming out a few years ago called The Artist, which talked about this very same issue, right? If you've ever have you seen some of the silent movies? Have you looked at any of them? They're really quite well done, considering there is no sound editing. The sound editing is basically an overlay of piano against the backdrop of whatever it is that you're watching. And I do feel bad for the example that this brings about technology really melding with an art form, and so the artists either had to adapt and move on, or they kind of got pushed out of that business, because if you didn't speak well, or, you had a voice that was grating to the ear, looking at you, Lita Lamont.
Wow.
Your job was really in jeopardy. And that really is tough in the business where, you feel like your experience is brief anyway, because you're going to stop being young and beautiful and maybe even talented, depending on what happens. So, but yes,
Yeah.
Don Lockwood.
Absolutely. It was a tumultuous time, but yeah, one of the first kind of films that were tackling this subject. There's been a few that kind of tackled this transitional period of Hollywood, but one of the most beloved is Singin' in the Rain, and that is what we're talking about this week, Michaela. So why don't we do this? We're going to need a cocktail that is worthy of Don Lockwood and his singing and dancing shenanigans out there in the rain. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's cocktail to get us ready to go, because there could be some singing coming. I don't know for sure, but we need a cocktail. We'll be right back.
You know that they're singing. If I'm going to be involved in a podcast about singing in the rain, at some point I'm definitely going to be breaking in a song. So this week's cocktail consists of dignity, always dignity, which is funny because, if you're a starving actor, you have no dignity. I mean, you have some, right? But you're going to do almost anything for a paycheck and the audience's cheers, right? And we see that. We see that. But
Kathy even says, you don't even have any dignity.
What are you doing? But this is called the Don Lockwood, and I have to say that when we first looked this up, this comes from Food Republic website. It's really good. When we first saw this, we were like, this looks really good, because it's definitely like a man's man cocktail. It's very masculine. It's very bourbon forward. It's very old fashioned-y. But then we tasted it, and holy macaroni and cheese. It's so good. Yeah.
Holy macaroni and cheese. It is so good. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So this is another quick twist on the old fashioned. We did one last week for John Wick. So kind of sticking with that theme here. But yeah, as you said, Michaela, Don Lockwood would drink something that's this. It's very sophisticated. It is it's full of dignity. It's full of amazing flavors, and it's super simple to put together. So let's do it. So you're going to grab a rocks glass, put a big ice cube in there. If you have one of those available, that's the best way to do it. Go ahead, and the recipe says 3/8 of an ounce of maple syrup. I don't know if that's like the particular size of spoon that they had on Food Republic. So just kind of eyeball it, somewhere between like a quarter and a half ounce of maple syrup. Put that in there. 2 dashes of aromatic bitters, 2 dashes of chocolate bitters, and then an ounce each of bourbon and an Islay scotch. So we used Elijah Craig and we use Jura for our scotch. So Islay scotches are the ones that come from the island region of Scotland, which are when you think of scotch, you think of that peat smoke flavor. Those are the ones that specifically come from the Islay region. So make sure you do that, because that smoke is really going to pair with that chocolate and the maple, and kind of that nice rich oakiness from the bourbon. It's real good. It's real good, Michaela. It's real good.
So as we all know, right, Michaela's fairly new to the bourbon adventure, okay, and all of the Scotch whiskey bourbon stuff, okay. It's not that I didn't like it, but for me, it was the alcoholic content would usually overpower the flavor for me. However, this is the cocktail. And I've said this a couple times, but this is the one. I am going to be drinking this on a just a Tuesday night because it's so easy to make. It's 4 ingredients in a glass with some ice. It's so simple and it's so good. That chocolate bitters, now not all chocolate bitters are created equal. The one that we used, it was basically just like a dark chocolate piece of richness that just overpowers your mouth in a beautiful way. I loved it. I think it might be too much for some people because there are 2 dashes in there. So you could play with this if you want flavor profile. But I thought that the Islay Scotch with the smokiness and the kind of the casky, old-fashioned-y, chocolatey concoction and the way that it just sits in your mouth and then it doesn't burn on the way down, even though it's 2 ounces of liquor. I mean, it's so good. So amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But this should have, I feel we should talk about this. We should drink responsibly because this will sneak up on you. After my one, I was like, wee.
That's true. Yeah. Tread lightly there whenever you're doing something like this for sure. But it's a perfect kind of evening cocktail, a perfect after dinner cocktail or cocktail party type of a thing. I did make a second one for myself later than when I was watching Singin' in the Rain to prepare for today's episode. And I did half the chocolate bitters. I only did 1 dash of that, and that was perfect for me. But give this a try, full boat. Let us know what you think about it because this one was excellent, Michaela. So very excited to share this one in the world. You can get pictures and all that stuff on our website. But what we should do really, if we're going to be out singing and dancing in the rain, we're going to need something to warm us up. I think this cocktail is going to be perfect for that. So why don't we do this? Let's mix up another one of these, quick and easy, and then we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Singin' in the Rain.
No, Miss Lamont, round tones, round tones. Now let me hear you read your line.
And I can't stand them.
Spoiler warning for Singing in the Rain. This film was made in 1952, so you've had 71 years to see this thing. So I'm not sorry that we're going to talk about all the things Singing in the Rain. There's going to be singing. There's going to be some dancing. You're not going to be able to see that because this is a podcast, but all of these things are going to happen. We're going to talk about the beginning, the middle, the end. We're going to talk about all the things. And I ain't sorry because you've had plenty of time to see this film, and everybody should go see it because it is one of the best. It is arguably the best musical in film history. It's like number 2. It comes in like in the top 5 of the 20 best musicals in all the lists. I've looked at them all. You can look them up. Which we can talk about whether or not it's actually worthy of that. But this film was amazing, which is interesting because I don't think it didn't win any Oscars, did it? Or did it?
It's a not no. As you said, this came out in 1952. It was directed by Gene Kelly and Stanley Donen, and it stars Gene Kelly as dancer turned stuntman turned leading man Don Lockwood. His musical sidekick Cosmo is played by Donald O'Connor. His silver screen would-be love interest Lena Lamont is played by Jean Hagen, and introducing the world, the voice of Kathy Selden, played by Debbie Reynolds. And no, Michaela, this didn't win any Oscars. It was nominated for 2. Jean Hagen was nominated for supporting actress, and it was nominated for best original score in a musical picture. Didn't win that either. They did 2 original scores back then. They did one for just regular films and one for musical films because musical films were the bee's knees at the time. What a better way to tell a story than with some singing and dancing.
That's right. That is absolutely right. And there's a lot of things that this film did that was so indicative of like a quintessential like 50s, 60s musical. We're going to talk a lot about it, but like some of the numbers had really amazing shots of overhead where you had people laying on the ground and creating this kind of circular cinematography moment where you had people looking right up at the camera. And that was really, I feel, very indicative of the time period. You don't see that much in in musicals today. This was recorded on like a sound studio and then lip synced over. So that was different than what we're seeing now, where people are actually singing and we're capturing it at the time that it's being filmed. And so, but I like this old fashioned or traditional way of doing a musical for that very reason. And of course, the absolute iconic scene of Gene Kelly dancing around in a rainstorm, singing to a bunch of stuff while he's tap dancing and making that happen. We're going to get into all of those things.
We will get into all of those things. Absolutely. Did want to make a quick note. Donald O'Connor did win the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor there in a musical or a comedy. So it wasn't completely shut out of awards, but yeah, didn't win either of those 2 Oscars it was nominated for. So let's get this thing started off, Michaela, because we got some stuff to talk about, and then we'll talk about kind of the significance of Singin' in the Rain once we get to the end. But the beginning of this film is incredible because you're outside of this movie theater. There's like some movie premiere or something, and you have like this big like stands are set up where people are there waiting to watch all of their favorite stars coming in, and you have police trying to hold like all these people back from getting too excited, and I like all these cars keep rolling up and everyone like stands up and gets real excited, and then they kind of sit back down like, oh, that's not who I wanted, because everyone is there to see Don Lockwood. And he goes up and he starts giving this most amazing speech randomly in front of this, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like what we watch now on the red carpet in front of the Golden Globes or in front of the Oscars, right? They're not asking him what he's wearing, but they're like, tell us your story and tell us how you feel. And he goes from like the beginning of time. He's like, I was born a small, poor boy. And we hear what he's saying, and then we watch the actual truth of what is happening. And it's so funny because he says that his life and has been filled with the mantra of dignity, when in reality, he's just done whatever he has tried, whatever he could to get by and to make a little cash and to stay true to his artfulness, which has been playing the violin or viola. I don't know which one because I'm not a musical person, but he's playing something, and his best friend is playing the piano with him. And then they're doing these tap dancing routines, and they go from like doing this in like theater lobbies and pool halls to doing it in like vaudeville. And then they finally kind of get into this picture studio. And this is where I think the art direction is so cool, because we have seen just recently Babylon, which is set it's supposed to be set at about the same time. And the idea of these picture houses, these distribution companies, and these they have these ginormous set stages, and they have these really huge areas where all the actors kind of go on and kind of commiserate around, and they all are working off of these enormous sound stages, and what that looks like. And he's telling this story about how he basically got into be a stuntman, and he meets Lina Lamont, who seems not so nice, even though he's a really good-looking, nice guy. I don't know why she thinks all of a sudden
this scene is awesome because he meets her and he goes up to her, right, and asks her out on a date, and she is not giving him the time of day until the studio executive comes up and says, I've cast you in the new film, and then all of a sudden she's very interested in going with him. But they do a really good bait and switch here with Lina Lamont, because Lina Lamont doesn't say anything until it turns out that her not being able to say anything very good is going to be a pretty pivotal part of this. But I love that scene so much. He shows her some interest, and she could not be bothered until she finds out that he's about to be a movie star too. And then from then on, it is Don and Lina, love of Hollywood.
Right. And I think this happens a lot, where you found people who had really good chemistry that, were not necessarily romantically involved at all. I mean, we see that today. Bradley Cooper is in a ton of movies with Jennifer Lawrence. They have amazing on-stage chemistry, but they are not an item. And then there's all these people that ship them. That's what the cool kids, the young kids that I don't understand are saying. We did the same thing. I'm young and cool. But in 1952, they did the same thing. In fact, people shipped them so hard, it became a thing where, in this case, Lina Lamont and Don Lockwood don't correct anybody. And so they're like, yeah, we're just good friends, even though Don Lockwood and Lina Lamont don't like, well, Don Lockwood can't stand Lena. Lena thinks that somehow all the things that she's reading about is totally true on all these magazines.
Lena ships Don and Lena too, for sure.
Yeah, she's like, you love me. And he's like, I would rather kiss a tarantula. So great.
It is really great. Yeah, absolutely. So they go to this movie premiere. That's a lot of fun. And then after, Don and Cosmo are walking out, they're headed on their way to like this rap party kind of thing up in the Hollywood Hills when Don gets accosted by a group of his adoring fans, and he ends up like running up on top of this truck and then just jumping down into some random car where we're going to meet Kathy Selden, played by Debbie Reynolds. And this kind of interaction is great. They're going, she offers to give him a ride, and he's kind of talking to her. She doesn't have like any earthly idea of who this guy is, or she's at least pretending really well that she doesn't know who he is. And she's giving him some shtick back, right? Don, handsome guy, very talented guy, movie star, adored, literally is having his tuxedo ripped off of him by his fans. And she doesn't care about any of that. She tells him that actors aren't even that talented because you don't have to say anything. Silent film guy, get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I think he comes on a little extra hard because he's so used to having these adoring fans, and she's very nice. But she's not just gonna, think that he hung the moon because he's Don Lockwood. And so, she does say these things like, oh, they're just a bunch of dumb show and it's not that big of a deal. And I don't actually watch the movies and I don't read any movie magazines. And it really bothers him. And so at first, so they kind of get into an argument about it because he takes it to heart and he's pretty insulted. And then a policeman shows up and kind of outs Don Lockwood as the Don Lockwood. And then she realizes this is a giant movie star and he's in your car. And it's the really great Don Lockwood who's been in like all these films, and so she's a little bit starstruck, and it's pretty funny actually.
I do like that. Kind of towards the end of this ride, she pulls over because she sees a police officer, and the officer is just like, "Oh, don't worry about it, lady. It's Don Lockwood. It's fine." Then he just jumped into your car randomly. No big deal. But they get to this party. They're having a great time. It looks like a pretty rip-roaring party. The studio head puts on one of these new fandangled talking pictures. It's just a guy. They're talking, and everyone is like, "Nah, that's a flash in the pan. No one cares about that. No one wants to see that." They like silent films, but bad news. That's some good foreshadowing there for what happens in this film is that people do indeed like these talking pictures, and the whole industry is about to be turned over. But remember that girl that we just met in the car? Yeah, maybe she was full of it a little bit, Kathy, because she shows up inside of this giant celebratory cake, comes out and does some chorus dancing. Pretty good. I really like kind of this section. There's about 10,000 streamers being thrown around. So kudos to Debbie Reynolds, who just keeps on dancing despite the fact that there's about 10,000 pounds of streamers hanging off of her. So good job there. But yeah, so Kathy's there. There's a pie to the face. That's bad news for Lena Lamont. And I don't know, Michaela, what do you think about this party here?
So I love that this is the first time I'd ever seen anybody jump out of a cake. Number one, it was really great. She's there. Kathy Selden is like, hey, leave me alone. I'm trying to do my job, because she actually is one of those working actresses that, like, you think that this is, back in this was probably the 20s, right? She's like, I'm going to get 15 cents and I got to live off a week for this. Leave me alone. But I love at the end of this musical number, they shuffle back out of the room and they take 37 pounds of streamers with them. It's so hilarious. Because you would never do that today. That's like a health and safety issue. There's no way that they'd be like, hey, we're going to do this, unless they were a bunch of stunt doubles somehow that were okay with it, because you could seriously get yourself hurt. And luckily, nothing like that happens. But Lena Lamont takes a pie in the face. She doesn't like that because she's a diva and doesn't like that Don likes her. And so, Kathy rushes out, even though Don's trying to figure out who she is, and because he's quite stricken with her. I don't want to say it's love at first sight, but he's definitely is. She's captured something within Don Lockwood, and so he
has found her very interesting.
Yeah, because she's not just gonna fall over and fawn over his every move the way that his adoring fans do, right? And I think that's something to be said for relationships in general. He's like this. There's something more to this, and she can sing, so she understands a bit about the business, right? She can sing, she can dance. Fun fact, I don't know if it's fun or not, but Debbie Reynolds had no previous dancing experience. So Gene Kelly actually admits that he was really awful to her the entire time they filmed this, because he probably wasn't very patient. I don't know, I wasn't there, but he has said that he was very surprised that she ever spoke to him again. Yeah, that's not good. But we love what they produced, because there's been there's a lot of scenes that come up after this where Debbie Reynolds does a pretty good job dancing in my estimation. As
she
a
does,
person. Yeah.
She, as a person, yeah, absolutely, she does a good job dancing, and that's kind of the crux of the story right here, right? So after this party, Lena is agitated as all get out. She took that pie to the face. She's going to go to the studio and say, "Hey, remember that Kathy Selden that threw this pie on my face? Make sure you fire her. Make sure she doesn't come back to work. Make sure she doesn't do anything else." Meanwhile, Don has been looking for her. All over town, hasn't been able to figure out where this girl is. But the industry has moved on. We've moved into talking pictures now. They're making a film, Lena and Don, called The Dueling Cavaliers. They make it. Everyone is hearing Lena's voice now for the first time. They're hearing Don's cheesy dialogue for the first time. You get a really kind of great scene where they're trying to figure out how to use the microphones, and Lena can't ever talk into the microphone, so it's like cutting in and out of her talking, which is amazing, as they're like running the microphone is in a plant, and then it's on like the front of her dress, and then it's on the shoulder of her dress, and it's really pretty great stuff. But the Dueling Cavalier, no bueno. The test audience says that is the worst thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and that's bad news for Don and crew, because this could spell the end of your career, right? You're a silent movie star, not a talking movie star.
That's right. And, Don Lockwood has a lot going for him. He's a good looking guy. He's got a great voice. Like they really did try. And this is true. And I thought this was really a really cool way that they filmed this, is that, the studios really tried to set the actors up for success. They got them voice coaching. They got them like movement coaching. We've got this really great scene where Lena Lamont is trying to learn how to speak, and it's like, and round tones round, and I can't stand him, and she's like, and I can't stand him. It's so great, because her voice is just so annoying, and I think that's probably partly why she got her Golden Globe, or her. No, she didn't get the Golden Globe. Sorry. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, because she's so annoying and she does it so well. But she's also not as receptive to all of this change as like Don Lockwood is. So there's a really great scene where Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, and this linguistics person is like talking about doing all these tongue tying kind of exercises to enunciate in front of the microphone. And I think that that's really fun. I love that. It's one of my favorite scenes. But it's really tough, because Don Lockwood's the only good thing about this film that's made. And they're in a lot of trouble, because RF, who's the producer of the film and a member of the studio, he's like, look, we have to go live with this. We have to send this out to the entire country in 6 weeks. And this is a total bomb. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. And so the three folks.
Yeah, Don, Cosmo, and Kathy are together hanging out. And Cosmo is like the brains of this operation, right? He's the one coming up with the plan. He tells the studio executive the plan. Maybe we can turn this into a musical. Don, Gene Kelly, you're okay at singing and dancing. As Cosmo comes up with that idea, he comes up with the new title. They're hanging out at the house. He has the idea to, you can kind of overdub Lena Lamont's voice with Kathy's voice. This is all going to work out. But instead of being the dueling, what's it called? The dueling
Cavalier.
The Dueling Cavalier, it's going to be the Singing and Dancing Cavalier. The Dancing Cavalier. They're going to be the Dancing Cavalier. That's right. But that's when you get the Good Morning song there in the apartment, because they've stayed up all night trying to concoct this plan. It's a pretty good plan, I think. But unfortunately, when your plan involves overdubbing the starlet of this movie house. Maybe she's going to find out about that and not take too kindly of someone usurping her power and prestige in this. She wants everyone to know that she is the real star, not Kathy. Get out of here, Kathy.
That's right. Well, and this is where we see a very young, bright Rita Moreno, because Rita plays Zelda, and Zelda is the one who actually tips off Lena that someone is dubbing her stuff, and it makes
Zelda.
her real mad. Yeah, thanks, Zelda. But it was really beautiful because I didn't realize until very recently that Rita Moreno was playing Zelda, so that's awesome. But yeah, Lena Lamont, she's real mad. She goes to talk to her lawyers and she's like, no, I'm going to continue to use Kathy as my voice moving forward. She's going to do all my singing. She's going to do all my speaking. And that's just the way it's going to be. And unfortunately, I think that also probably happened a lot where people would think they were doing the studio a favor and then get wrapped into having a contract where they didn't get a lot of say into the kind of creativity and the art form that they would bring to a film. And so they were typecast as certain things, or they were only used for their voice. And so, again, I thought this was a really clever way to bring some of these issues to light in a different way. But of course, like you said, Donald O'Connor, who plays Cosmo Brown, he is amazing. He doesn't get enough credit. Even after they come up with this concoction, it's deep. Kathy goes and like lays a giant kiss on Don Lockwood, and Cosmo's like, "You're welcome." Yeah, it's fine. It was a great idea. I know. Yeah, good job, Don. And it's kind of funny, but he's got this great idea that at the end of this premiere, when Lena's like, I'm going to sing Singing in the Rain in front of all of these people, Cosmo's like, let her do it. And we'll just pull up the curtain and we'll show the entire world who's actually singing the song.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, you open that curtain and everyone finds out that it's Kathy. Kathy storms out of there. She's pretty upset. She feels used as a pawn in this game, but it's okay because sometimes the pawn can win the game. So Kathy is going to be risen to the level of stardom that she deserves as this dancing cavalier goes off without a hitch. People love it. And now instead of Don and Lena, you have Don and Kathy ready to ride off into the sunsets and the Hollywood love affair to be for sure. So that's kind of briefly Singing in the Rain, Michaela. We went through that pretty quick, which is okay because this is a musical. So really the bulk of the story is being told through these musical numbers, these dance numbers. And one of the things that's amazing about Singing in the Rain are all the dance numbers are kind of one shot, right? So apparently like stuff like Good Morning, apparently they filmed from like 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. Because they were trying to get it all in one take. You had to have it exactly right. There's a lot of moving pieces in all of these things. There's a lot of like prop work. I really like in the kind of the first one in that flashback scene where he's talking and, you got Don and you got Cosmo like going through doing like their vaudeville kind of routines. They have this one where they're both playing a violin and they're like doing stuff with the bows and manipulating them. The singing and dancing and kind of these held out long shots for them is amazing. It looks so cool. It looks so great. And the amount of choreography, which I assume Gene Kelly was probably in charge of, I'm assuming that's what he was in charge of directing on this film. Really cool. I love these song and dance numbers.
Yeah. Oh, they're absolutely classic. I mean, Donald O'Connor's work when he's singing the Make 'Em Laugh song and he's performing that, it's one of my favorite pieces of film of all time.
You get exhausted watching it.
I mean, and actually he like was a heavy smoker. Apparently he smoked like 4 packs a day. And after doing that, he had to be hospitalized because as you said, it's all in one take. I mean, and when you look at it, it's maybe broken into 2 or 3 pieces of film. So he's doing these flips and rolling around on the floor and getting lifted up by, these long 2x4s. I mean, it is insane the amount of physicality that all of these people had to have in order to make it look good, and then to do it now that we know that it was hours and hours and hours to make it look fresh and not look tired, and just some of the creativity around doing what they did was just amazing. I think you're right. When you talk about the props for Good Morning, they have these raincoats and hats, and they repurpose them to kind of create these different worlds that you kind of dip into, which is really nice because it's very fantastical in the way that those pieces of dance are created, which is different than the very last kind of piece of the film where they talk about the Broadway melody. And so it was a way for them to kind of insert a very 1950s-ish look at coming to the big city with nothing. And it had Sid Charisse as one of the dancers dancing with Don Lockwood, and telling this really beautiful story in just dance and song, which was really, really cool. I mean, and then of course we have to talk about the Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, that's right. Singing in the Rain. It's the namesake. You get like a little glimpse of it kind of right when you very first turn the film on, right? You get the kind of three leads there in their raincoats going through it just a little bit, as the credits start to, the title comes up and stuff like that. But then, yeah, you get actual Don Lockwood, Gene Kelly, singing in the rain quite literally there with his umbrella and his it's still just dress shoes. It's hard for me to watch. I really hate having get my socks wet, stepping in a puddle. That is the absolute worst. He is sloshing through puddles left, right, and center. But it's so fun and whimsical. It's very magical. It's like one of the magical movie moments out there. But I don't know, Singing in the Rain, Michaela. What can you say about that performance? It's one of the all-time greats.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest issue for me is how do they get the rain to, and when you
10
look at
billion gallons of water is how they got it.
No, yeah. But how did they, because every time he had to start over because it's all in like next to one take. I mean, the entire thing, he starts off dry and you can see at the beginning the water kind of resting on his shoulders and stuff because he's in this wool suit is what it looks like, which sounds itchy AF. But you get this look at the beginning of every scene. He's dry and he's getting wetter. And then by the end, he's completely soaked, right? But the fact that you can still hear the clinking and clacking of his tap shoes while he's in the rain is really cool. And then he goes from having these tap moments to like doing full puddle jumps in this water until the cop like stops him. And he's just kind of sheepish and like, I'm singing in the rain, but he's doing it because it looks like he's really fallen in love with Kathy and she seems to be returning that. And he's just so happy. He doesn't know what else to do. And I really love that because it's a really light feeling of, feeling like everything's going to be fine and you're just so happy, even though it's the symbolism is very clear, but it's still, I think it gets lost. And he's just really happy, so happy that he doesn't mind that he's singing in this giant rainstorm. I think it looks better than it actually is because I have to say, I've never put on a giant wool suit and gone out dancing, but I have done what you said, which is I got my socks wet. Not nearly as much fun. Dancing in the rain when you've got a lot of clothes on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
wet
fair.
And itchy and uncomfortable.
The world is your oyster, I guess. If you're Gene Kelly, is the moral of the story. Maybe nothing gets you down when you're Gene Kelly. That's entirely possible. But one of kind of the things I think that's so endearing about this movie, and it's interesting because you hinted on the fact that Gene Kelly was not particularly kind to Debbie Reynolds in this, and then they still managed to have this crazy great on-screen chemistry. But what I really like about it is in the dance sections, be it just between Don and Cosmo, or when it's the three of them, or even later when he's dancing with Sid Charisse, they just look like they're having the most fun in the whole world doing these dance numbers, which is crazy. Especially if two of them weren't getting along. That's amazing to me. But it's so kind of like intoxicating to watch because they just look like they're having an absolute blast. Especially like Don and Cosmo when they're at the dictation office. They just look like they're having like the world's best time. Like they're like two little kids just like running around on a playground or something. It's amazing and it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and the song Moses Supposes, it's very fantastical and just funny and silly. And it looks effortless. And this was the film for me that made me really want to do singing and dancing and acting. And I mean, I saw this when I was very young. It's a great film for kids. My son watched this with me just last night. It's one of his favorite films. And it's because it's got a lot of layers. I think no matter whether you're very young or older, you're going to love certain aspects of it. But it really just looks like it was all the things that you think of as like, you know, golden Hollywood, and it captures that so well in so many ways. The change that happens and that's inevitable in you know, making films and the film industry in general. The camaraderie that you have, where even if you don't like someone, you make a film together and it becomes a part of you, and it becomes a part of history in a way that is just very different than other industries because it's seen by so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they even address that within the film, right? Because you have Don and Lena are having that scene, and they're fighting, and then they just go on to have kind of this electrically charged chemistry of the scene when they're filming this movie, right? And like the love is, or like the passion is clearly there, even though they're having this fight like within the scene, because it's a silent film, so they don't have any dialogue going on. So yeah, just stuff like that is amazing. And then you brought up the really good point that this, kind of, propelled you into wanting to do singing and dancing and acting, and really kind of made you fall in love with Hollywood. And I think that's one of the neat things. I wanted to talk just briefly about when they do, I think the song is "You Were Meant for Me," I think, when they go onto the sound stage there and they go in, and first of all, for being shot in 1950, it looks incredible because they are like tiny walking into this airplane hangar size thing, but it's so kind of magical, right? As he's turning on the lights to the background, and then the spotlights and the backlights, and he's turning on the fan, and all this stuff, all this movie magic, being literally just kind of turned on in front of your eyes. So I think that Singin' in the Rain, and it does an amazing job of paying homage to Hollywood, right? And kind of this fun musical sort of a thing. But I can only imagine, like in 1952, it was probably the same for them. People then, right, would have been mesmerized by like, oh, I remember this was the transition from when we went from silent pictures to talking pictures. And then 30 years later, when we would have seen Singin' in the Rain for the first time, or 30, 40 years later, we're looking at it and we're like, oh, this is classical Hollywood, right? This is how they used to make movies in the 1950s with all these sound stages and things, and it's so like magical and whimsical on that level. And I'd be interested to see 40 or 50 years later what Singin' in the Rain is going to represent in the terms of kind of this timeline of Hollywood. And I think that is really neat. And for me, probably kind of the big takeaway is that Singin' in the Rain just kind of once a generation it just turns over as something that's magical, and is movie magic. That's why it's called movie magic, because that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and then this film, it didn't get surprisingly, I mean, when you think of Gene Kelly, at least when I do, you don't think, I mean, maybe you think of an American in Paris, which won Best Picture the year before. But most people, I think, know and recognize this film over that one, despite the fact that it didn't get the tons of accolades that American Paris did. And the fact that now, 71 years on, it's still something that shows up on Turner Classic Movies. It's one of the I don't know if it's because it's also easy to sing, but in all sorts of like vocal recitals that I've seen for kids, this the songbook comes up a lot. And it's just really it's interesting to me because there have been hundreds of musicals out there, and this one continues to be in the top 5. I said this before, but if you look at like the New York Times, you look at the New Yorker, all of them have a list. I mean, and this is continuously in the top because of the way it was filmed. The subject matter. Gene Kelly is amazing. Debbie Reynolds is so fresh and like innocent, and you really feel their energy on the screen. And Donald O'Connor is just there's just nothing like him. He is like the most amazing wingman best friend you could ever ask for, because he'll always make you laugh, and he's the idea behind everything. So he'll save your butt, and you can still be Don Lockwood. It's great. I mean, who doesn't want this? This is amazing.
That is amazing. Absolutely. So that is Singin' in the Rain. Not only is it important to Hollywood history, it is important to Drink the Movies history, because now we have a new favorite to go to weeknights cocktail in the Don Lockwood. So definitely let us know if you mix up one of those. We want to see pictures of yours. We want to, find out how you're doing your variations on old fashions. Let us know if there's any other good ways to do it, because we want to know that. And let us know what you think about Singin' in the Rain. When was the first time you saw it? Did Michaela not sing enough this time? What is your favorite song from Singin' in the Rain? Let us know all that stuff. You can do that on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram and Twitter, and facebook.com/drinkthemovies. If you want to get into our Discord and talk to us about Singin' in the Rain, go check out the social medias. The link is there. And if you want to support the podcast further, a really great way to do that is on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/drinkthemovies. We just had our Patreon exclusive release for John Wick 4 last week. That's available now. So if you want to check that out, go check out the Patreon. We got a lot of fun stuff going on over there. But Michaela, this was a really good drink. This was a really good movie. And we've got a lot more really good movies coming. And, people are going to want to make sure that they're subscribed. They're going to want to make sure they're giving the podcast some love. Where can they go do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Good Pods, Near Pods, anywhere where Anchor or Spotify podcasts are distributed. Wherever those are distributed, wherever you're listening, just keep listening. Press the subscribe button where you are right now. That's probably the best way to go around about this. We do 2 drops a week. We have had probably the best 2 weeks we've ever had. Can I say that? Yeah. I'm very excited. It's super insane that we can talk about movies and cocktails in a way that we love, and in a way that y'all seem to really enjoy. So join us in this community, get on our Discord, please, because the more the merrier. It's just a giant movie cocktail party here at Drink.
It is. Absolutely. It is. It is all the time. Yeah. So make sure you get in on all that stuff. That's the best way to keep up with what we've got going on, and what we've got going on next week, Michaela. We are headed back out to the movie theater to see another new release. The new releases just keep coming and coming and coming. And this week we are going to be talking about one of my favorite things of all time is Super Mario Brothers. I remember being a young kid playing Super Mario Brothers, and now I am a person with the means to go see the Mario Brothers movie. So we're going to be talking about that. We've got a couple of really fun cocktails, including a very delicious variant on a milkshake. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. We got that coming next week. And I don't know, Michaela, but Singin' in the Rain. What else can be said that people haven't been saying about Singin' in the Rain since 1952? So I don't know. I think we better just call it with that. I'm going to go mix up another Don Lockwood. I'll make you an extra dash of the chocolate bitters in yours for sure. And we'll talk to everyone next time on
Drink the Movies. I'm dancing and singing in the rain. I couldn't help myself.
Love it.